The market owner heard the stock boy speak 9 languages and did something that... Robert Johnson had spent 30 years of his life building Riverside Market in the Brookside neighborhood of Chicago. He never imagined that on an ordinary Tuesday, his life and those of his employees would be changed forever by a discovery that would leave anyone speechless. It happened when he overheard his most unassuming stock boy, Michael Taylor, fluently speaking French with a tourist looking for American spices. Robert froze in the middle of the aisle, clutching his inventory clipboard, completely stunned. Michael, who always kept his head down and spoke only when necessary, was now gesturing animatedly as he explained to the Frenchwoman the differences between types of pepper. "Merci beaucoup, vous êtes très gentil," said the tourist, beaming. "De rien, madame. J'espère que vous aimerez la cuisine américaine," Michael replied naturally. Robert felt his heart race. In 5 years working at the market, Michael had never mentioned he spoke French. In fact, he barely spoke English during shifts, limiting himself to polite greetings and one-word answers when asked about work. Still processing what he'd just witnessed, Robert watched Michael approach a confused Italian couple examining the labels on the pasta. "Can I help you? Buongiorno, come posso aiutarvi?" The Italians instantly lit up. They launched into an animated conversation in Italian, and Michael responded with the same fluency he'd shown with the Frenchwoman. Robert rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was imagining things, but he wasn't. Over the next 15 minutes, he witnessed something that would make anyone question if they were dreaming. Michael assisted a German tourist by explaining the differences between granulated and refined sugar in perfect German. Then he helped a Japanese family find ingredients for chili, speaking Japanese as if he'd been born in Tokyo. The situation grew even more surreal when Michael chatted in English with Americans, in Spanish with Argentinians, in Mandarin with Chinese visitors, and even in Arabic with a Lebanese family searching for halal products. 9 different languages. 9. Robert's legs nearly gave out. He leaned against a shelf of cookies, trying to understand how a minimum-wage stock boy who worked in the back could master so many tongues. Was Michael hiding something? Was he some kind of spy? An international fugitive? The wildest possibilities raced through the shopkeeper's mind. Michael finally noticed his boss's stare. His cheeks flushed instantly, and he lowered his head, pretending to organize nearby products. Robert approached slowly, still processing everything. "Michael, we need to talk," Robert said, trying to keep his voice steady. The young man swallowed hard. At 25, Michael had an honest face, but his eyes now showed pure panic. He knew that tone well. It was the same one his old bosses used before letting him go. "Yes, Mr. Johnson. Did I do something wrong?" "In my office, now." The walk to the small administrative room at the back of the market felt endless for Michael. Curious employees watched them pass, whispering among themselves. Susan, the 50-year-old supervisor who'd worked there a decade, raised a questioning eyebrow. She'd noticed the unusual trend of foreign customers specifically seeking out Michael in recent weeks, but hadn't thought much of it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Robert closed the office door and sank heavily into the chair behind the desk, which was cluttered with papers and receipts. Michael remained standing, nervously fidgeting with the green cap from his uniform. "Sit down," Robert ordered, pointing to the chair across the desk. Michael obeyed silently, mentally preparing himself for yet another dismissal. It had happened 4 times before. Always the same story. Employers discovered his language skills and immediately grew suspicious of his intentions. "Where did you learn to speak all those languages?" The question came straight, no beating around the bush. Michael sighed, knowing lying wouldn't help. Robert had seen it all. "It's complicated, Mr. Johnson. I've got time, and you're going to explain every detail to me." Michael clasped his hands together, staring down at them. The story he was about to tell was painful, but maybe it was his only chance to keep the job he so desperately needed. "I grew up at New Hope Children's Home, an international shelter here in Chicago. It wasn't your typical shelter. It took in refugee kids from all over, children of struggling immigrants, some orphans like me. Robert leaned forward, his initial suspicion giving way to genuine curiosity. There were kids from everywhere you could imagine. France, Italy, Germany, Japan, China, Arab countries, Argentina. It was like a little United Nations in there. And me, well, I've always been good with languages. Define good. Michael gave a melancholy smile. When you're a child abandoned by your own parents, you'll do anything to feel accepted by someone. I realized that when I spoke to the other kids in their language, they felt less alone. So I learned. First a few words, then phrases, until I could speak fluently. Michael's voice wavered slightly. Robert noticed the young man's hands trembling. I was the shelter's official translator. Whenever a new child arrived who didn't speak English, Sister Margaret would call me to help. It was my way of being useful, of having a purpose. And where's your family now? My birth parents abandoned me when I was 2. I never knew why. The only family I have is my younger sister, Emily. She grew up in the shelter with me. Robert processed the information slowly. For 5 years, Michael had worked quietly in the stockroom, always punctual, always efficient, never causing trouble. He'd never mentioned his personal history or his extraordinary abilities. Why didn't you ever tell me this before? Michael laughed bitterly. Because every time I do, I get fired the next day. How so? Bosses always think I'm lying, that I'm overqualified for the job, that I must be up to something. I've heard it all, that I'm an industrial spy, that I'm pretending to be less intelligent than I am, that I'll steal clients or trade secrets. Robert fell silent for several minutes, absorbing the revelation. Outside the office, the market continued operating as usual, but inside that small space, 2 lives were being examined in a new light. Do you have a college degree? Michael hesitated before answering. I have a degree in business administration from Lakeside University. I graduated 3 years ago. The revelation hit Robert like a punch to the gut. A business graduate working as a stock boy. There was definitely more to this story. Why would a business graduate take a job in a market stockroom? Because I need the money urgently. For what? Michael took a deep breath. The time had come to tell the whole truth. My sister Emily is in medical school. The tuition payments are 3 months behind. If I can't catch up, she'll be expelled. Every penny I earn goes toward her education. The explanation made sense, but Robert still felt there were missing pieces to the puzzle. Why didn't Michael look for a better job that matched his education and skills? Michael, with 9 languages and a college degree, you could work at any multinational company in the area. Why settle for minimum wage here? Because multinationals run background checks. They'd find out I grew up in a children's home and assume I'm emotionally unstable. Smaller companies think I'm overqualified and worry I'll leave as soon as something better comes along. You were the only one who gave me a chance without asking too many questions. Robert stood up and began pacing the small room. Michael's story was shocking, but something about it deeply moved the shopkeeper. He himself had faced hardships in the past, building the market from scratch after losing his parents in an accident when he was just 22. Does Susan know about this? No one knows. You're the first person I've told everything to. Why? Michael looked directly into Robert's eyes for the first time in their conversation. Because you've always treated me with respect. You never made me feel inferior for working in the stockroom, and because I trust you. The sincere statement touched Robert deeply. In 30 years of business, he'd rarely felt such a genuine human connection with an employee. Michael, I'm going to make you an offer, but first, I want you to promise me one thing. Anything, Mr. Johnson. Never hide who you really are again. Your skills are a gift, not a curse. Michael felt his eyes well up. No one had ever validated his abilities like that before. Now, listen carefully. I'm giving you a 1-week trial in an administrative role. I want you to help me with our international suppliers. We've had communication problems for months with companies in Argentina and Germany. But Mr. Johnson, the other employees will... Let me handle the other employees. You deserve a chance to show your potential. Michael could hardly believe what he was hearing. After years of rejection and being underestimated, someone was finally recognizing his worth. And about your sister's tuition, we'll find a solution. No one should sacrifice their own future for someone else's education, no matter how noble the intention. When Michael left Robert's office, he seemed like a completely different person. He walked tall, with confidence, as if he'd recovered a part of himself he'd hidden away for years. Susan, who had been watching from a distance, approached Robert as soon as Michael returned to work. "What happened in there? Michael seems different." "I discovered we have a treasure working in our stockroom, Susan, and we almost lost him through pure ignorance." In the following days, the transformation at the market was remarkable. Robert put Michael in charge of dealing with international suppliers, and the results were impressive. In just 3 days, Michael resolved communication issues that had been costing the business dearly for months. The young man negotiated better prices with Argentinian meat suppliers, established direct contact with German specialty beer importers, and even started talks with Japanese distributors interested in exotic American products. But not everything was smooth sailing. Some of the longer-term employees began showing discontent with Michael's sudden rise. Frank, who had worked as purchasing supervisor for 8 years, was the most vocal in his criticism. "I don't understand how Robert can trust a recently promoted stock clerk to handle international suppliers," Frank complained to Susan during their break. "Michael is doing a good job," Susan defended, having quickly become an admirer of the young man's skills. "Good job? Susan, in 3 days he took on responsibilities it took me years to earn. There's something off about this." Frank wasn't alone in his suspicions. Some employees began questioning how Michael had acquired so many skills without ever mentioning them before. Rumors started circulating. Some thought he'd lied on his resume. Others suspected he had special connections with Robert. The situation grew even tenser when Michael made his first major mistake. It was a busy Friday when Michael received a call from the German supplier about an urgent shipment of organic products arriving over the weekend. The communication was confusing, mixing German with English, and Michael misunderstood the storage instructions. As a result, a $20,000 shipment of refrigerated goods was stored improperly, spoiling completely by Monday. Robert discovered the problem when he opened the warehouse and found an entire shipment of ruined organic products. The smell was unbearable. "Michael, in my office, now," Robert said, visibly upset. This time, the walk to the office was even tenser than the first. Michael knew he'd made a serious mistake, one that would cost the market dearly and likely get him fired. Frank, who had arrived early and witnessed the discovery of the spoiled shipment, couldn't hide a satisfied smirk. To him, this mistake proved Michael wasn't cut out for the responsibilities he'd been given. $20,000, Michael. $20,000 wasted because of a miscommunication, Robert said, slamming his hand on the desk. Michael was pale. He knew there was no excuse for what had happened. "Mr. Johnson, I take full responsibility. It was my mistake. I didn't understand the supplier's instructions correctly." "Your mistake. Michael, I trusted you. I put my reputation on the line defending you to the other employees." "I know, sir, and I feel terrible for letting you down." Robert paced the room, visibly agitated. $20,000 was a lot of money for a mid-sized market. Worse, he'd have to explain himself to the other employees who already questioned his decision to promote Michael so quickly. "Frank is demanding I fire you. He says I was irresponsible to trust you." Michael felt his heart sink. Once again, his life was falling apart because of a mistake. "I understand, Mr. Johnson. I'll go get my things." Michael stood to leave, but Robert stopped him. "Sit. I'm not done." The young man obeyed, confused. Robert stopped pacing and looked straight at him. "Before I make any decision, I want you to explain exactly what happened, every detail of your conversation with the German supplier." Michael took a deep breath and recounted the entire phone call. As he spoke, something in Robert's expression began to change. "Wait, you said the supplier mentioned something about a change in the products? That they weren't the same as usual?" "Yes. He said they were special products with a different expiration date. But the connection was bad and he was speaking fast. I couldn't catch everything." Robert picked up the phone and called the German supplier directly. The conversation lasted nearly 20 minutes, during which Michael watched his boss's expression shift from anger to surprise, and then to something that looked like relief. When Robert hung up the phone, his first words left Michael completely bewildered. "Michael, you didn't make a mistake. You saved us from a much bigger problem." "What do you mean?" "The supplier confirmed there was an issue with the manufacturing of those products. They weren't fit for consumption. If we'd put them on the shelves, we could have poisoned dozens of customers and faced lawsuits." Michael's eyes widened as he tried to process the information. "But I misunderstood the storage instructions." "No, Michael. You sensed something was wrong with the products and instinctively decided to isolate them. Your mistake was actually an unconscious but correct decision." The revelation completely changed the dynamic of the situation. Instead of costing the market money, Michael had potentially saved the establishment's reputation and safety. "The supplier will refund the full value of the goods and even give us a discount on the next order as an apology for the issue," Robert continued. Michael felt like he was living a dream. In a matter of minutes, he'd gone from nearly being fired to an unwitting hero. "Mr. Johnson, I swear I didn't know I was doing the right thing. I really thought I'd misunderstood." And maybe that's exactly what saved the situation. Your intuition worked better than your conscious understanding. When they left the office, Robert made sure to explain the situation to all the employees present. Frank, who had arrived ready to witness Michael's dismissal, was visibly disappointed with the outcome. "This doesn't prove anything," Frank muttered to Susan. "It was luck, not skill." But Susan had watched Michael working over the past few days and had reached a different conclusion. "Frank, you're being unfair. Michael has shown skills none of us have. Instead of seeing him as a threat, you should recognize he can help us grow." The tension among the staff, however, was far from resolved. Michael noticed the suspicious glances and whispered comments, but chose to focus on his work and prove his worth through results. It was during this time of internal tension that something happened that would drastically change the market's dynamics. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. A regular customer at the market, Mrs. O'Sullivan, a 70-year-old Irish woman who had lived in America for 50 years but still had a strong accent, had always struggled to communicate with the staff. Her daughter usually accompanied her on shopping trips to avoid misunderstandings, but that day she had come alone. Mrs. O'Sullivan was looking for specific ingredients for a traditional Irish recipe she wanted to make for her grandson's birthday. She tried explaining to Frank, who was working at the deli counter, but communication was difficult. "I want that cheese that's like Cashel Blue, you know?" But not exactly the same. Frank, already irritated with how his day was going, grew impatient. "Ma'am, I don't understand what you're asking for. We have several types of cheese right there in the fridge." Mrs. O'Sullivan looked visibly embarrassed. She noticed other customers in line starting to grow impatient, and her anxiety rose. That's when Michael stepped in, having noticed the delicate situation. "Good afternoon, Mrs. O'Sullivan. Can I help you?" The older woman turned to Michael with gratitude. "Oh, Michael, so good to see you. I'm looking for ingredients to make cheese tarts and custard tarts. It's for my grandson's birthday." Michael smiled warmly and replied in perfect Irish accented English. "Of course, ma'am. For the traditional cheese tarts, ma'am, you'll need fresh ricotta-style cheese, but with a specific texture. And for the custard tarts, we have a special cream here that's just like the one from Dublin." Mrs. O'Sullivan was moved when she heard Michael speaking with the accent of her homeland. "Oh my goodness, dear. You sound just like my late husband. How did you learn that?" "I had Irish friends in the past, ma'am. I learned to value your traditions." Michael spent the next 20 minutes helping Mrs. O'Sullivan find every necessary ingredient, explaining possible substitutions, and even giving cooking tips. The change in the woman was remarkable. From embarrassed and anxious, she became radiant and talkative. "Michael, you're an angel. It's been years since I felt so well taken care of anywhere." Other customers who observed the scene were impressed by Michael's patience and knowledge. An American woman who overheard the conversation approached. "Excuse me for interrupting, but were you talking about custard tarts? My grandmother was Irish, and I've always wanted to learn how to make them. but I could never find the right ingredients. Michael immediately offered to help the second customer as well, explaining the differences between American and Irish products and how to adapt traditional recipes. Frank watched everything from a distance, feeling increasingly useless. In 5 minutes, Michael had solved a problem he couldn't and had even charmed other customers in the process. The situation became even more impressive when a family of Spanish tourists arrived, looking for typical American products to take back to Spain. "Excuse me, do you speak Spanish?" the father of the family asked Michael. "Of course. How can I help you?" Michael spent the next half hour helping the Spanish family, not just translating but explaining the history and origin of each American product, suggesting combinations, and even teaching them how to prepare typical dishes. The family was so impressed that they asked if Michael could accompany them on a visit to Pike Place Market the next day to help with more shopping. Michael, of course, had to decline because of work, but suggested specific products they could find there. When the family left, they left a generous tip for Michael, even though he explained it wasn't allowed. They insisted so much that Robert, who had watched everything, told Michael to accept it. "Michael, in 30 years of business, I've never seen anything like this," Robert said when the customers left. The scene had been observed by practically all the employees at the market. Some, like Susan, were genuinely impressed and proud. Others, like Frank, felt threatened by Michael's competence. In the following weeks, something extraordinary began to happen. Foreign customers started specifically seeking out Riverside Market, recommended by other tourists who had been well served by Michael. The number of foreign visitors to the store tripled. Mrs. O'Sullivan became an even more loyal customer, always bringing Irish and American friends with Irish heritage to meet Michael. She even started promoting the market in the local Irish community. "That young man is special," she'd say to anyone who'd listen. "He doesn't just speak Irish English, he understands our culture." Robert quickly realized that Michael was becoming a significant competitive advantage. Other markets in the area were bigger and had similar prices, but none offered the multicultural service Michael provided. He decided to formalize Michael's new role, creating the position of International Customer Service Coordinator and increasing his salary accordingly. The news of Michael's promotion divided opinions among the staff. Susan and some of the younger employees were genuinely happy for their colleague, but Frank and some of the more senior employees saw the situation as unfair. "He's been here 5 years and already got 2 promotions in 1 month, Frank complained openly. "I've been here 8 years and I'm still in the same position." The tension peaked when Frank decided to confront Robert directly. "Mr. Johnson, I need to talk to you about Michael." "What about Michael?" "I think you're making a mistake promoting him so quickly. The other employees are upset and I can't guarantee the work environment will stay harmonious." Robert sighed. He knew the situation was causing tension, but he also knew Michael was delivering real results for the business. "Frank, what exactly are you suggesting?" "Put Michael back in the stockroom and stop these experiments. He might be good with languages, but that doesn't mean he's ready for administrative responsibilities." "And if I disagree?" Frank hesitated before answering. "Then maybe it's time for me to look for an opportunity elsewhere." The threat caught Robert off guard. Frank was a competent and loyal employee, someone he trusted. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore Michael's obvious potential and the positive results he was bringing. "Frank, I'll think about what you've said. But in the meantime, I expect you to remain professional." That night, Robert stayed late at the market, crunching numbers and reflecting on the situation. Customer traffic had increased 20% since Michael started assisting foreigners. Sales of imported products had doubled. International suppliers were offering better terms because communication had drastically improved. On the other hand, he could feel the tension among the staff. Frank wasn't alone in his dissatisfaction, and Robert knew a hostile work environment could hurt everyone. It was during this solitary reflection that Michael appeared. He'd forgotten his wallet in the break room and came back to get it. "Mr. Johnson, are you okay?" "Michael, you scared me. I thought everyone had gone home." "I forgot my wallet, but you seem worried." Robert looked at the young employee. Michael had proven not only competent, but also genuinely concerned about the well-being of the workplace and the people around him. "Michael, sit down. I want to talk to you about something important." The two sat in the plastic chairs of the small employee break area. The dim lighting created a more intimate atmosphere for the conversation. "Some employees are unhappy with your rapid rise. Frank specifically threatened to quit if I don't put you back in the stockroom." Michael stayed silent for a long moment, processing the information. "Mr. Johnson, if my presence is causing problems, maybe it's best if I leave." "That's not what I want, Michael. You've been delivering exceptional results, but I need to find a way to keep the team harmonious." "I understand Frank, you know," Michael said thoughtfully. "He's been here much longer than I have. It's natural he'd feel wronged." "How do you suggest we resolve this?" Michael thought before answering. "What if I kept handling international tasks but worked alongside Frank instead of independently? He has experience I don't, and I have skills that could complement his work." The suggestion showed a maturity that impressed Robert. Instead of feeling threatened or defensive, Michael was proposing a collaborative solution. "Do you think Frank would agree to work with you?" "I don't know, but I'm willing to try." "Actually, I'd like to learn from his experience." The next day, Robert called a meeting with Frank and Michael to discuss a new organizational structure. The proposal was for Frank to become the general purchasing coordinator, overseeing both domestic and international suppliers, while Michael would be the international relations specialist, working under Frank's supervision. Frank was visibly surprised by the proposal. He had expected Robert to simply fire Michael or send him back to the stockroom. "Mr. Johnson, I didn't expect this." "Frank, you're right when you say you have more experience. I want you to use that experience to guide Michael, while also leveraging his skills to expand our business." Michael extended his hand to Frank. "I hope we can work together. I have a lot to learn from you." Frank hesitated, but eventually shook Michael's hand. It was hard to stay hostile in the face of such a respectful proposal and mutual recognition. In the following days, the new dynamic began to take shape. Frank, initially wary, gradually started to see that Michael was genuinely interested in learning, not competing. Michael, in turn, showed real humility, always asking for guidance and valuing Frank's experience. The partnership bore fruit when Frank and Michael, working together, managed to negotiate a highly advantageous contract with an Italian supplier of specialty olive oils. Frank had identified the opportunity, and Michael had facilitated all the communication and negotiation. This deal would never have happened without the language skills, Frank admitted to Susan. Michael translated technical details that made all the difference in the negotiation. Gradually, other employees began to see that Michael wasn't a threat, but a resource who could benefit everyone. His language skills started to be viewed as an asset for the entire market, not just for him personally. The shift in perspective solidified when Michael helped Jessica, the cashier, resolve an issue with a French customer who had been poorly served the week before. The customer had left the market unhappy and threatened to complain online. Michael personally called the customer, apologized in perfect French, explained there had been a misunderstanding, and invited her back for a better experience. The customer not only returned but brought friends and left a positive review online. "Michael saved my reputation," Jessica said gratefully. "I was afraid I'd be fired over that mess." It was in this more harmonious context that something happened to truly test the market's new dynamic. One Thursday afternoon, a young woman showed up at the market looking for Michael. She was visibly nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder as if afraid she was being followed. "Michael," she called hesitantly. Michael, who was organizing imported products with Frank, turned and paled when he saw the young woman. "Emily, what are you doing here?" It was the first time the market employees had seen Emily, Michael's sister. She was about 20 with long dark hair and a look of desperation on her face. "Michael, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Michael glanced at Frank, who nodded understandingly. "Go talk to your sister. I'll finish here." Michael took Emily to the employee break area, noticing she was visibly shaking. "Emily, what happened? You look terrified." Emily took a deep breath before speaking, as if preparing for a difficult confession. "Michael, I lied to you. About everything. What do you mean? About med school? About the overdue tuition? About everything. Michael felt the world spinning around him. Emily, explain this to me properly. What lie? I never studied medicine, Michael. I study education at a public college. There's no tuition to pay. The revelation hit Michael like a bullet. For years, he had sacrificed his own ambitions, taken jobs below his qualifications, lived on the bare minimum to support his sister's medical studies. So, where did all the money I gave you go? Emily began to cry. I was being blackmailed, Michael, by people who found out I used fake documents to get a scholarship. What fake documents? When I left the children's home, I forged an income statement to get a full scholarship at the private college where I really wanted to study. But then I realized I couldn't keep up with the coursework and dropped out. I started at the public college, but the people who helped me forge the documents found out where I was studying and started blackmailing me. Michael was in complete shock. Everything that had motivated his life for the past few years had been based on lies. Emily, why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I was ashamed, and because you were so proud of having a sister studying medicine. I couldn't disappoint you. Disappoint? Emily, did you think I'd be disappointed because you study education instead of medicine? It wasn't just that. It was everything. The fake documents, the money you earned going to the blackmailers. I got myself into trouble and dragged you into it. Michael buried his face in his hands, trying to process everything he was hearing. Years of sacrifice based on lies, years of taking jobs below his qualifications to support non-existent studies. Michael, there's one more thing, Emily said hesitantly. What else? They came after me today. They want more money and they're threatening to tell you everything if I don't pay. Who are they? The guy who forged the documents and some of his friends. They found out where you work and said they'd come here if I don't get them more money. Michael stood up abruptly. The situation had spiraled completely out of control. Emily, you have to go to a lawyer. This is extortion. With what money, Michael? And besides, I committed a crime too. If this gets out, I could be expelled from college and have legal trouble. Michael began pacing back and forth in the small break room, trying to find a solution. His entire life had been built around lies, and now those lies were threatening to destroy everything he'd worked for. Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. I know you sacrificed everything for me, and I betrayed you. Michael stopped pacing and looked at his sister. Despite the anger and disappointment, he still saw the scared little girl who had grown up with him at the children's home. Emily, we'll figure this out. But you have to promise me you'll never lie to me again. About anything. I promise, Michael. But what are we going to do? Before Michael could answer, they heard loud voices coming from the market. Emily turned pale. I think they're here. Michael opened the break room door and heard Frank arguing with 3 men at the entrance of the market. Look, gentlemen, if you're not customers, I'll have to ask you to leave, Frank said firmly. We came to talk to Michael. We know he works here, replied one of the men, a guy around 30 with tattoos on his arms. Michael stepped forward, with Emily hiding behind him. I'm Michael. What do you want? Ah, finally. We came to collect a debt from your little sister here. Other employees began to gather, sensing something was wrong. Robert, who had been dealing with suppliers in the office, came out when he heard the commotion. What debt? Asked Michael, trying to keep his voice calm. Your sister owes $5,000 for our services, and the interest is adding up. Robert stepped closer to the group. Excuse me, what's going on here? None of your business, old man, one of the men replied rudely. The disrespect immediately angered Robert, who wasn't the type to tolerate disrespect in his establishment. This is my market, so everything that happens here is my business. Michael, who are these people? Michael was torn between wanting to protect Emily and the need to be honest with Robert, who had become more than just a boss to him. Mr. Johnson, it's a personal matter. I'll handle this outside the market. No, Michael, said Emily, stepping out from behind her brother. No more lies. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing. Emily turned directly to Robert. "Sir, my name is Emily. I'm Michael's sister. These men are extorting me because of some fake documents I used 2 years ago. My brother had no idea, but they're threatening to cause trouble for him here at work." Emily's brave confession took everyone by surprise, especially Michael, who hadn't expected her to reveal everything like that. Robert processed the information quickly. He immediately recognized it as extortion and that Michael was a victim in the situation. "I see, and you," he said, addressing the 3 men. "What exactly are you here for?" "To get our money," replied the leader of the group. "And if you don't? Then things might get unpleasant for Michael here at his job." Robert took a step forward, showing he wasn't intimidated. "Gentlemen, I'll be very clear with you. First, this is private property and you weren't invited in. Second, what you're doing is called extortion and it's a crime. Third, if you don't leave now, I'm calling the police." "Take it easy, old man. Nobody wants trouble." "Then leave, now." The 3 men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. They'd counted on intimidation and on Michael wanting to keep the situation quiet. "This isn't over," one of them threatened as they headed for the exit. "Of course it isn't," Robert replied. "Because you won't be bothering this family anymore." After the extortionists left, Robert turned to Michael and Emily. "Both of you in my office, now." The walk to the office was tense. Michael was mortified for dragging the market into his personal problems, and Emily was terrified of the possible consequences of her confession. Robert closed the door and sat heavily in his chair. "Now I want the whole truth, from the beginning." Michael and Emily spent the next hour telling the whole story. Michael explained how he'd built years of his life on a lie about Emily's medical studies. Emily confessed about the forged documents, the extortion, and how she'd lied to her brother for so long. Robert listened silently, occasionally asking questions to clarify details. "Michael, did you know your sister had forged documents?" "No, Mr. Johnson. I found out today, along with everything else." "And Emily, why didn't you ask for help sooner? Why let it get this far?" "I was scared. Scared of going to jail, of being expelled from college, of disappointing my brother. And they always said if I told anyone, it'd be worse for me and Michael." Robert sighed deeply. "You two grew up without parents, without a proper family structure. It's understandable you made some wrong choices. But now, we need to fix this the right way." "Mr. Robert," said Michael, "I understand if you want to fire me. I don't want my problems to affect the market. Michael, you're the victim in this story, not the guilty one. But Emily needs to resolve her legal situation." "How?" "By seeking professional help. I know a lawyer who works with troubled youth. He can advise her on how to fix her status and handle the blackmail." Emily was surprised. "But I don't have money to pay a lawyer." "For now, I'll cover it. Consider it a loan you can pay back when you're able." Michael was moved by Robert's generosity. "Mr. Robert, you don't have to do this. It's not your responsibility." "Michael, in 5 years working with me, you've never given me a single day of trouble. On the contrary, you've been an exemplary employee and brought exceptional results to the market. If someone threatens you, they threaten my business too." Robert's words deeply touched the 2 siblings. For the first time in their lives, they had someone willing to fight for them without asking for anything in return. "But there are conditions," Robert continued. "What?" Emily asked. "First, no more lies between the 2 of you. Second, Emily will work part-time here at the market to pay for the lawyer. Third, you'll both go to therapy to learn how to deal with the trauma of abandonment and the children's home." Michael and Emily exchanged glances. The conditions were fair. In fact, they represented more support than anyone had ever offered them. "We accept," Michael said, speaking for both of them. In the following days, Robert kept his promise. He scheduled a consultation with a lawyer specializing in juvenile issues, Dr. William Parker, who reviewed Emily's case and developed a strategy to resolve her situation. Dr. Parker explained that while Emily had committed an offense by falsifying documents, the fact that she was a minor at the time and acted out of necessity could be mitigating factors. He suggested she approach her college, confess what had happened, and try to resolve it through a student support program. As for the blackmail, Dr. Parker was firm. It was a serious crime and should be reported to the authorities. Emily, as long as you don't report these men, they'll remain a threat, and they could do this to others too. Emily, initially hesitant about involving the authorities, was convinced when Dr. Parker explained she'd be treated as a victim, not a criminal, in the blackmail case. Michael, meanwhile, went through a deep emotional transformation. Discovering that years of sacrifice had been based on lies initially devastated him. But with Robert's support and therapy sessions, he began to understand that his choices to help his sister, even based on false information, reflected his generous nature. Michael, psychologist Dr. Sarah Miller said during one session, "You weren't just deceived by your sister. You were motivated by love and family loyalty. That's not a weakness, it's a virtue. But I feel stupid for believing her lies. You feel betrayed, and that's natural. But consider this. Emily lied because she was afraid of disappointing you, of losing your love and support. That shows how important you are to her." Therapy also helped Michael recognize behavior patterns he'd developed since childhood. His tendency to accept subordinate roles and hide his abilities was tied to a belief that he didn't deserve success, a belief shaped by years of abandonment and rejection. "Michael, you've always settled for less because deep down, you believe you don't deserve more. That needs to change." Emily, in turn, faced her own struggles in therapy. She discovered that her lies weren't just about protecting Michael, but also about protecting her own self-esteem. "I always felt inferior to Michael," she confessed to Dr. Sarah. "He was the smart one, the talented one, the one everyone admired at the children's home. I was just his little sister. And how did that make you feel?" "Like I had to invent a better version of myself to be worthy of his love." Therapy revealed that both Michael and Emily struggled with self-esteem issues related to parental abandonment and life in foster care. They had developed different strategies to cope with these feelings. Michael hid and downplayed his abilities, while Emily created fantastical versions of herself. Meanwhile, at the market, Emily started working part-time as a general helper. Initially shy and unsure, she gradually adapted to the work environment. Frank, who had become a sort of mentor to Michael, extended that guidance to Emily as well. "Listen, kid," he said on her third day, "I know you and your brother have been through tough times, but here at the market we're family, and family helps each other." Frank's acceptance was crucial in helping Emily feel less judged for her past mistakes. Susan also became a maternal figure for her, teaching her practical aspects of retail work and offering advice on rebuilding self-confidence. "Emily, everyone makes mistakes. What defines us isn't the mistakes, but how we handle them," Susan said during a break. Emily's transformation was gradual but noticeable. She began speaking more, smiling more often, and showed a natural talent for customer service. A month after the incident with the blackmailers, Dr. Parker brought good news. Emily's college had decided not to punish her for falsifying documents, considering her age at the time and the fact that she had come forward voluntarily to rectify the situation. Instead, they offered psychological and financial support through student assistance programs. As for the blackmailers, 2 of them were caught in the act trying to pull the same scam on other students. The third took a plea deal to provide information about other victims in exchange for a reduced sentence. "You did the right thing by reporting them," Dr. Parker said. "You probably saved others from going through what you did." Michael felt vindicated. For the first time in his life, facing a problem instead of simply accepting it had led to a positive outcome. The most significant change, however, happened in the siblings' relationship. Their joint therapy sessions helped them establish more honest and deeper communication. "Michael," Emily said during one session, "I want you to stop sacrificing your life for mine." "What do you mean? You've always done everything for me, worked jobs beneath your talent, settled for less to give me more. That has to stop." "Emily, I do it because I love you. And I love you too. But love isn't sacrifice. Love is mutual support." Dr. Sarah intervened. Michael, Emily is right. You've created a dynamic where you're always the caretaker and she's always the protected one. That's not healthy for either of you. From that conversation on, the siblings began redefining their relationship. Michael learned to let Emily take on responsibilities and contribute to their well-being. Emily learned to value her own abilities and return the support she had always received. The transformation was noticed by everyone at the market. Michael became more confident, more assertive, willing to take on bigger challenges. Emily flourished as an employee, showing communication and organizational skills no one had expected. Robert watched these changes with satisfaction. He had invested not just money, but time and emotional energy into the family, and was now seeing concrete results. 3 months after the incident with the extortionists, Robert made a decision that surprised everyone. Michael, Emily, I'd like to speak with both of you in my office. The siblings exchanged glances, momentarily worried. They had grown accustomed to positive conversations with Robert, but memories of past troubles still stirred anxiety. "Have a seat," Robert said, but this time he was smiling. "Do you remember when all this began?" he asked. "When you found out I spoke several languages," Michael replied. "Exactly. That made me think about hidden potential, how sometimes we overlook the value of the people right in front of us." Michael and Emily listened intently, unsure where Robert was going with this. "I've decided to expand the market. I'm opening a second location in an area with many immigrants and tourists, and I want the two of you to be the managers." The proposal caught them completely off guard. "Mr. Johnson," Michael said, "I don't have the experience to manage an entire store." "Michael, you have 5 years of experience in a market, a degree in business, speak 9 languages, and have shown leadership and problem-solving skills. What more experience do you need?" "And me?" Emily asked. "I've only worked here for 3 months." "Emily, you have a natural talent for customer service. You're studying business in college, and you have a genuine way of connecting with people. Plus, you two work well together as a team." Robert stood and walked to the office window, looking out at the bustling market below. "Do you know what my biggest realization has been these past few months?" "What?" they asked in unison. "That talent without opportunity is wasted, and opportunity without support is cruel." He turned to face them. "Both of you had so much talent wasted because you lacked opportunity. I can offer the opportunity, and I can also offer the support you need to succeed." Michael felt his eyes well up. Once again, Robert was offering more than they had ever dreamed of. "Mr. Johnson, how can we repay such trust?" "By making the new store a success, and more importantly, by offering others the opportunities you never had." Robert's proposal included a 6-month intensive training plan, during which Michael and Emily would learn every aspect of running a market, from inventory control to personnel management. "You'll work with me at the current store in the mornings and study business management in the afternoons. I'll cover the cost of a specialized retail course." "What if we can't do it?" Emily asked, still uncertain. "Emily, you've already overcome challenges much greater than managing a market. If you could survive abandonment, a children's home, extortion, and rebuild your lives, you can do anything." The contract signing ceremony took place 6 months later, with a small celebration at Riverside Market itself. All the employees were invited, including Dr. Parker and Dr. Miller, who had become important figures in the siblings' lives. Frank, who had become a true mentor to Michael, gave an emotional speech. "When Michael first arrived here, I saw him as a threat. Today I see him as proof of how talent, when properly guided, can transform not just one life, but an entire community." Susan also spoke, addressing Emily directly. "Emily, you came here as a frightened girl and have become a confident, capable young woman. It shows that all of us have the potential to grow, no matter where we start." Robert gave the final speech. "Michael and Emily, you represent something I deeply believe in, that a person's worth isn't determined by their origins, but by their ability to grow, learn, and contribute. You've transformed this market, but more importantly, you've transformed yourselves." The new store, International Riverside Market, opened 2 months later in a Chicago neighborhood known for its cultural diversity. From day one, The store stood out for its multicultural service and welcoming atmosphere. Michael implemented a basic language training program for all employees, while Emily developed a personalized customer service system that made every shopper feel special. The store quickly became a gathering place for immigrants and tourists, who found not only products from their home countries, but also service that respected their cultures and specific needs. 6 months after opening, International Riverside Market was among the highest-rated stores in the area. Michael and Emily had proven they were capable not just of managing a business, but of innovating and creating value. But professional success was only part of their transformation. The deepest change had happened in their personal lives. Michael had married Jessica, an English teacher for foreigners whom he'd met through work at the store. Jessica had also grown up in foster care and understood the emotional challenges Michael faced. "Michael," Jessica said one evening as they discussed future plans, "do you realize how much you've changed?" "How so?" "When we first met, you'd always apologize for your opinions, as if you didn't have the right to your own ideas. Now, you lead a team with confidence and make important decisions without fear." Michael reflected on his wife's words. It was true. Therapy, Robert's support, and especially his professional success, had gradually healed the emotional wounds he'd carried since childhood. Emily had also found her path. She was in her final year of education studies and had started dating Frank Jr., son of Frank, who worked as an accountant for a local company. "You know what's strangest?" Emily told Michael during a Sunday lunch at Robert's house, which had become like a second home to them both. "What?" "I always thought I had to be perfect to be loved. Now I know I'm loved precisely because I'm imperfect." Emily's observation deeply moved Michael. Both had spent their lives trying to earn love, not realizing they were already worthy exactly as they were. Robert, watching the siblings' conversation, felt profoundly satisfied. His decision to support Michael and Emily had been one of the best of his life, not just for the business results, but for what it had meant personally. "Do you know what you've taught me?" Robert asked. "What, Mr. Johnson?" Michael asked. Even after becoming manager and practically an adopted son, Michael maintained his respectful tone. "That investing in people is always the best business. Money spent on equipment brings financial returns. Money spent on people brings human returns." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Parker and his wife, who'd been invited for lunch. Dr. Parker had become not just the family's lawyer, but a close friend. "Michael, Emily, I have interesting news for you," Dr. Parker said. "Good or bad?" Emily asked. "Good. Very good. You've been invited to participate in a TV program about overcoming adversity." The announcement took everyone by surprise. "How so?" Michael asked. "A producer heard your story through my office. He wants to make a documentary about how people who grew up in children's homes can overcome difficulties and build successful lives." Emily was visibly uncomfortable. "I'm not sure I want to expose our lives like that." "It's your decision," said Dr. Parker. "But think about the positive impact this could have. How many children in shelters could be inspired by your story?" Michael looked at Emily, trying to gauge how she felt. "Emily, what do you think?" "I'm afraid of how they'll tell our story. What if they focus only on the problems and not the solutions?" Robert intervened. "You can demand editorial control. Make sure the story is told in a way you approve of." After much debate and several weeks of reflection, Michael and Emily decided to participate in the documentary, on the condition that the focus would be on the solutions and the people who helped them, not just the problems they faced. The documentary, titled Languages of the Heart, aired 6 months later and had a nationwide impact. The story of the orphan siblings who found a family in their workplace and transformed not only their own lives, but an entire community, touched millions of people. Most importantly, the documentary influenced public policies related to youth aging out of foster care. Michael and Emily were invited to join committees studying ways to better prepare institutionalized youth for adulthood. "I never imagined our story could shape public policy," Michael said to Emily after a meeting at the social services office. "That's because our story isn't just ours," Emily replied. "It's the story of thousands of children who grow up without families." 2 years after the documentary, Michael and Emily founded the Languages of the Heart Institute, an organization providing vocational training and psychological support for youth leaving foster care. The institute, operating in a room attached to the International Riverside Market, offers language courses, computer skills, sales training, and most importantly, emotional support for young people facing the same challenges Michael and Emily once did. Robert became the institute's primary sponsor, and many other local business owners joined the effort, offering internships and job opportunities to the youth involved. "You've created a virtuous cycle," Dr. Miller said during a visit to the institute. "People who were helped are now helping others." The institute's success led to a national network of similar programs. Michael became a national consultant on integrating foster youth into the workforce, while Emily, now a graduate in education, developed specialized teaching methods for youth with abandonment trauma. Within 5 years, over 1,000 young people had participated in the programs created by Michael and Emily. Many of them found not just jobs, but true callings and surrogate families in their workplaces. During the Institute's 5-year anniversary celebration, Robert gave a speech summarizing the extraordinary journey that had begun on an ordinary morning at the supermarket. "When I heard Michael speaking 9 languages, I thought I discovered a hidden talent. In truth, I discovered something far greater, the transformative power of giving opportunities to those who'd never had them." Michael, now a father of 2 young children, looked at the audience filled with youth, business owners, psychologists, and social workers, remembering the shy boy who once hid his abilities for fear of rejection. "If someone had told me 10 years ago that I'd be standing here today, speaking to a crowd about overcoming adversity, I wouldn't have believed it," Michael said in his speech. "But I've learned our limitations aren't in our abilities, but in the opportunities we're given." Emily, now married and also a mother, spoke about the importance of accepting help and offering help. "For a long time, I thought asking for help was a sign of weakness. Now I know that refusing help is just foolish, and the best way to thank those who helped me is to help others." The event ended with an emotional surprise. Frank, who had retired but still volunteered at the Institute, announced the creation of a scholarship fund for young people from children's homes interested in higher education. "Michael and Emily taught me that experience without generosity is just selfishness," said Frank. "I want to use my life experience to open doors for other young people." Susan, also retired, announced she would be the coordinator of the Institute's mentorship program for young women. "Every girl who grows up without a mother needs a maternal figure at some point in life. I want to be that figure for as many girls as I can help." When the celebration ended and everyone went home, Michael, Emily, and Robert stayed behind at the International Riverside Market, tidying up. "Do you know what the most amazing part of this whole story is?" asked Robert. "What?" replied the siblings. "It all started because I paid attention. I paid attention to an employee who would usually go unnoticed. It makes me wonder, how many other Michaels are out there hiding their talents out of fear or lack of opportunity?" Robert's question lingered in Michael's mind. It was true. His story wasn't unique. All across the country there were talented people working in positions far below their potential, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked opportunities or carried traumas that kept them from shining. "Mr. Robert," said Michael, "I think our next project should be creating a program to identify hidden talents in small and medium-sized businesses. How would that work? A free consulting program for small business owners, teaching them how to spot and develop potential in their employees." Emily loved the idea, and we could partner with universities to offer free training courses for employees who show promise. Robert smiled. Even after so much success, Michael and Emily were still thinking of ways to help others. "You two never stop, do you? Always wanting to do more for others." "It's because we learned something important, Mr. Robert," said Michael. "What?" "That our happiness isn't complete while others still suffer from the same problems we've overcome." Michael's words perfectly captured the transformation in their lives. From insecure, traumatized young adults, they had become agents of social change, using their personal experiences to create solutions for collective problems. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this incredible story of Michael and Emily. Wasn't it moving to follow how two siblings who grew up in a children's home managed to turn their lives around and help so many others? Leave a comment below about which part touched you the most, and if you know someone who also overcame great hardships in life. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.